Oh my god, it's Video Games. We are back again to talk about video games. And today we've got quite a large and varied stack of games here. We're going through a plethora of consoles, so let's kind of just jump right into it. First up here is a game I've really wanted to talk about on the channel for a little while, and I pretty much can guarantee you I will review this in 2026. And this one comes to us from Atlus, and that is Trap Gunner. Now, if you're not familiar with Trap Gunner, it's essentially a really neat spin on the Bomberman formula. I mean, so you kind of have your basic stuff here. You can pick your characters that kind of go head to head, and you pick your arena. But instead of kicking or placing bombs and blowing up your opponent, you're actually trying to lay traps for your opponent to fall into. And the really interesting gimmick here is that not only can you lay your traps, but you want to lay them in such a way that you can kind of chain and combo them together into one gigantic trap for like the most amount of damage. It's a really, really neat concept that works really well once you kind of got a hang of it, as it's not always the easiest trying to chain your different traps into one another, but once you kind of nail it down and you can actually make it happen, it's really, really satisfying and really cool. It's a nice spin on that kind of traditional Bomberman formula. This game's a lot of fun. I also really, really love like the kind of art design in this game. It's very like late 90s sci-fi kind of, or late 90s cyberpunk kind of neo sci-fi. Reminds me a bit of like Serial Experiments Lain at times, but also like, look at this gorgeous cover here. Love the kind of just like sci-fi anime look of the cover here. Now this is the Japanese version, as the US version is quite hard to come by and also quite expensive, so I opted to grab the Japanese version, which is also slightly uncommon, but far less expensive. This was about $40 all said and done. Yeah, Trap Gunner, definitely check this one out. I highly recommend playing it. I will definitely be talking about this one in 2026. Keeping up with the PlayStation here, we have what is kind of the first kind of bad game and also a weird spin-off in what is otherwise a classic survival horror series, and that is Resident Evil Survivor. Now here I have again the Japanese version, which is Biohazard Gun Survivor, but Resident Evil Survivor is kind of it's a first-person game that incorporates like the light gun into it, so it's definitely different for the Resident Evil series, but the goal is still kind of the same, and that is, you know, hey, you're exploring this place, you're looking for keys and other items, and taking out zombies along the way. But this game is definitely kind of categorized for me as a so bad it's good game. It has some wonderfully cheesy voice acting, hella big polygonal models that are just kind of hilarious to look at times, and it's just cheese in and out of it. It's such a B game. It's such a B game. I absolutely love it. No matter how bad it is, and honestly, it's not like all that terrible. It's fine. It's passable. But I was introduced to this game many years ago thanks to Uncle Derek over at Stop Skeletons from Fighting. I believe his very first episode of Is It Really That Bad was actually on Resident Evil Survivor, and I've kind of loved it ever since then, no matter how bad it was. But this is one of those bad games that is also really expensive. The US version is like $100+, and I was like, yeah, I don't need that. And it wasn't until just recently that I realized you could get the Japanese version here for about $20 to $25. So I was glad to scoop this up for a pretty cheap price, as this is, you know, the perfect kind of like cheesy PlayStation 1 horror game that is perfect to play through in like an October spooky Halloween night. So hey, maybe if you're looking for something to play through this October, give Resident Evil Survivor a shot. See if you can Resident Evil survive the whole experience. Okay, these next handful of games are all games that I picked up while I was on tour in late August. Yeah, my band went out on the road for a couple of days, and I made sure we stopped by a couple of game stores while we were out and about to see what I could find, and got myself a handful of interesting pickups here. Now, this first one is actually the follow-up to a somewhat notorious game, and that is Fighting Force. As Fighting Force was, I believe, initially developed as a 3D entry in the Final Fight series, and they turned it down, so Eidos kind of turned around and just made it its own thing. But here I have Fighting Force 2. And what can I say about Fighting Force 2? I've not played a ton of it. I really only kind of scratched the surface on it the other night while I was capturing footage. But it seems that it kind of really switches it up from the first game. As I mean, you still have your beat 'em up elements in there, but now you have like objectives for every level. It's no longer just go in and beat people up and make your way through the stage. It's go in, find what your objective is, find your objective, complete your objective, and kind of get out. There's a lot more to it, and I don't know if it all necessarily works. At times, it kind of comes off as like overstuffed. Also, the kind of clunky controls that you really find in these early 3D games has not helped this game age very well. So this maybe isn't the greatest game out there, but I'm interested to put a little bit more time into it and really see what it's about. Yeah, and I got this for all of $20, so even if I don't like it, not the biggest loss here. But yeah, that is Fighting Force 2. Next up is a game sort of in a similar boat. It's actually one I picked up thinking it was a completely different game, and when I got home to play it, realized, oh, this is not at all what I thought it was, and I have never heard of this game. And that is Tenchu Stealth Assassins. Now, this is actually a really neat game, as it's kind of like a ninja stealth action game. And you play as one of two ninjas, and you kind of have these, each level is like a little setup and scenario. The first one is like, hey, defeat the evil merchant, and you're thrown in, and you have to stealth your way through the whole levels, try to go undetected. If you do get detected, kill the person without alerting other people, and find your target and take them out. And it's actually really neat. I love the little like kind of story vignettes you get of each level. Hey, this one's about killing the merchant. Hey, this one's about delivering these attack plans to a general and trying to stay undetected as you go through, this village that's full of ninjas. Or the third level is all about like, hey, find this hostage and get them out without getting detected. And it's really, really cool. Though I will say, this is definitely another one of those PlayStation 1 games that time has not been too kind to it in regards to the controls, as you really need that second thumbstick to really move the camera around, because it's kind of hard to tell if you're about to drop off of a roof into the line of sight of somebody, into a group of people, or if you're going to drop down and be perfectly fine. And it's kind of tough to tell what you're going to drop into and such like that, or even just to see what's around a corner sometimes. So this would be like the perfect game to get like a remake or a remaster of some sort. I would love to see that, as I think the concept is really good. It really does a great job of delivering on that kind of like ninja stealth vibe that you would see in like a Kurosawa film, or even just like ninja films and kung fu films from the 70s and 80s. But yeah, Tenchu Stealth Assassins, one I'd not heard of. And I am glad I picked this up though. It's really neat, and I definitely want to put some more time into this, as it does seem pretty cool. But yeah, that is Tenchu Stealth Assassins. Moving over to the Sega Saturn, we've got a little game here that feels like it just doesn't get enough recognition. Sega Saturn enthusiasts definitely know about this one, but I feel like this is kind of like an unsung gem in Sega's early 3D catalog, and that is none other than Burning Rangers for the Sega Saturn. Now, what can I say about this game? So the setup here is essentially like, what if it was the future and the fire department is now outfitted with like Bubblegum Crisis Night Saber style mech suits, and you have to go in and fight fires and save hostages. It's a really cool setup, and it actually works pretty well. Ironically, of all the early 3D games I have here, this one has the best controls. But this is kind of, good arcadey fun action. You're going into these futuristic buildings, and you have a certain time limit before the structural integrity runs out and things will collapse, and you have to put out fires, save hostages, and get them out, and complete objectives. It's a lot of fun, and it is really awesome. I love the graphics in this one. They are very cyberpunk style, kind of like a Trap Gunner and such, as that kind of like late 90s cyberpunk style to them. I also love like the design on the box art here. It totally leans into that kind of style that has come back around in the last few years, and I absolutely love it. So yeah, Burning Rangers is really cool, and I highly recommend picking up the Japanese version, as the US version I think was like one of the last games released for the Saturn, and is quite expensive because of that, whereas the Japanese version is much less so expensive. And actually, when we were down in Florida when I picked this one up, and I noticed they had a copy in their case, and I said, hey man, can you grab that copy of Burning Rangers for me? I'd like to see what the price was. And he pulls it out, and they were trying to charge $75 for this, and I had looked it up, and I was like, okay. Saw that it was more or less going for about $45.50 on eBay, so I was like, hey, I'm seeing this is going for about $45.50 on eBay. How about we meet in the middle? Will you do $60 for this? And they were more than happy to oblige, and I was more than happy to pay a little bit more than I could have gotten this for online to help a local spot, keep afloat. So yeah, Burning Rangers, awesome game on the Sega Saturn. Highly recommend checking it out if you get the chance. Alright, these last two games I got here, I actually picked up in North Carolina at a place called Second and Charles. Now, Second and Charles definitely exists throughout the country. However, I'm not sure if it's more of a regional thing or not. But it's essentially just like a slightly bougier version of Goodwill. But I went in there and noticed that they had quite a big Wii selection. So I was like, all right, hell yeah, I collect for the Wii. Let me go see what they got on their shelves here. And as I'm looking through, I noticed that there is one game with a Japanese spine on it. I'm like, oh, what is this? And it was none other than Fatal Frame 4 Mask of the Lunar Eclipse. And I was like, no way! I love the Fatal Frame series, and this game right here, up until a couple of years ago, was actually kind of rare because it did not officially get a US release in its heyday, and it wasn't until the remaster that came out on the Switch and I believe other consoles about 2 years ago that it finally got a US release. And I've played that version and really enjoyed it, but I was so stoked to see this there. I was like, no way. And for $14, I absolutely scooped it up. And what also made me laugh is that they had it marked down as a Tenchi Muyo DVD, which is extra funny because I'm also a fan of Tenchi Muyo. But yeah, $14, there was no way I was leaving Fatal Frame 4 there. But, Fatal Frame 4, if you're not familiar with the series, the whole concept here is that you have a camera and you're fighting ghosts with those cameras. In this game, it's kind of a switch up in the series where you have multiple protagonists that all kind of have their different stories that are all told at the same place, and they all kind of eventually intertwine. But you're essentially in like this abandoned mental hospital, and you're going through, and these games have such great atmosphere. They're super spooky with all the different ghosts that'll just pop up, the different apparitions that'll pop up and you can try and take quick pictures of for points. And then there's the actual ghosts you have to fight where you have your camera and you have to kind of like lock in and or lock on them and wait for a meter to fill up for you to do more and more damage to eventually take them out. And the concept's really cool, and it's kind of based on, I think, like the Japanese folklore that, if somebody takes a picture of you, it contains your soul. So it's a really neat idea for a series, and I've loved the Fatal Frame series for a good handful of years. And this is definitely a good one. Not my favorite. I personally prefer Fatal Frame 2. So if maybe you haven't played this series, check out Fatal Frame 2, whether it be the PS2 version. There's a Wii remake of it as well. And then, of course, there's the newly announced remake of Fatal Frame 2 that's coming out in 2026. So maybe if you haven't played any of the Fatal Frame games, that might be a good way to hop into the series. And lastly, we have a little NES game here that I've actually been looking for quite a while. So back in July, I managed to finally pick up a copy of Friday the 13th on the NES. And since then, I have been on the hunt for essentially the flip side of the coin. And that is none other than Nightmare on Elm Street for the NES here. Now, all things considered, of all of the LJN slop that is on the Nintendo and the NES, this is one of the better ones. Honestly, I feel like this one and Jaws are actually quite playable, all things considered. Is it a perfect game? No, but I actually think the platforming in this is pretty solid. I like the kind of like spooky haunted house kind of aesthetic it has. I mean, Freddy's in there. I feel like it's a decent concept of like, hey, you've got to collect all of Freddy's bones before you can bring him back to try and officially take him out. It's a neat concept. And also the music in this game is really good. I especially love that like kind of main theme as you're walking through the streets and going to the next areas. Really good music. But the best thing about this one is that when we were in second in Charles, I kind of looked through the main area where all the games were. And my buddy was like, hey, they've got a couple more games up front. And I was like, oh, sweet, okay. And I see in their little case that they have a Nightmare on Elm Street. I'm like, okay, cool. What's this going for online right now? Look it up on eBay, and it's going for about $75, $80. And I'm like, oh, man, that's a little steep. But, you know, let me call the lady over here and see what they've got it going for. And this is the thing I absolutely love about some of these secondhand stores is that when they price stuff, they don't usually go back and reprice it if the price has gone up. And sure enough, she pulls it out, and it's going for all of $50. Not $75, not $80. Take $25 off that, $50. So I immediately scooped this up, as it is very few and far between in my collecting days here that I get a really, really good deal, especially out in the wild. So I was really happy to pick this one up for a good price and finally add it to my collection. Anyways, that's going to do it for this episode of Video Game Pickups. Let me know what y'all have picked up here recently. I've got some more games to talk about in November, so I will see you all then. And until then, I will see you all in the next episode.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you like this episode, consider checking out these other videos right here, or even subscribing. Also, if you'd like to throw me a couple of bucks, you can support the show on Patreon.